Excited about Backstage but don't know where to start? Spotify has a new learning experience designed to help you get up and running with Backstage. Get familiar with key Backstage concepts and technical architecture. And with our step-by-step tutorials, learn how to set up, configure, and customize your Backstage app, helping you to reduce onboarding time and making your developers happier, faster. Get started today. Visit backstage.spotify.com/learn.
And here we go. Hello, check. Let me make sure my audio is all right. So yeah, as you saw, we just launched Backstage Learn yesterday, or on Wednesday, sorry. And it's a collection of 3 tutorials which you can use to just get started with Backstage, and slightly advanced in the third one, which takes you from your existing softwares and how to import that into Backstage. And more coming on this learning platform soon. But for today, I'm going to explore how you, as an individual contributor, or as someone who has adopted Backstage, can create plugins for it. And there's so many ways in which you can create Backstage plugins, just because a plugin in Backstage means a lot of things. So welcome, my name is Himanshu. I am a developer advocate for Backstage at Spotify, and I'm streaming from Stockholm. So let's get started. I hope y'all already know about Backstage. Just a quick intro. Backstage is a developer portal, or basically a platform which you can use to build your own developer portal for your engineers to look around and do their daily job and explore the software ecosystem. And there's so many more things that can be done using Backstage. But specifically, plugins are what they provide the key functionalities in Backstage. So basically, all the core features like catalog or software templates, which you can use to create new softwares, or the documentation plugin, everything is a plugin. And these are large plugins. They have complex backend systems. They use databases, and these are developed. Like catalog has been developed for 2 years now in the open. But there are smaller plugins as well. So if I go to catalog, and if I open, let's say, just one component in it, here's a small PagerDuty plugin. This PagerDuty plugin connects to PagerDuty and just shows you for this service who's on call, and provides you a bit of functionalities, like you can trigger an incident if you think the service is down, and the on-call person will be notified. If you go to backstage.io/plugins, you can find all the plugins here, all the open source plugins here. So if you're an adopter of Backstage, you don't just need to use these open source plugins. You can create plugins for your own. It'd be private, and your internal teams can develop upon it. In fact, at Spotify, we have over 150 plugins created by hundreds of teams, and most of them are not open source. So today, we are going to do some hacking, and let's see how much we can cover. But first off, I want to start with creating a new plugin, and it'd be just a front-end only plugin. And let's see ways in which we can use it and just explore the code a bit. So welcome to the ride. All right, so I am in the Backstage monorepo. You can just clone it using git clone and copy this URL. Make sure you run yarn install and everything. I have done it. And let's create a new branch. I wonder if some music is would be nice. Turn it on and put it. The awkward silence is when yarn is running. Right. So I'm on a new branch. The easiest way to start creating plugin is by running yarn create plugin. That's it. So if you have a Backstage repository, this yarn command should already be set up for you. And I can show you some secrets to explain this. Let me open this project in my VS Code. I'm always afraid of revealing some secret tokens and such. Let's see. Let's hope it doesn't happen this time, because I'm streaming to 4 different platforms today, and it'd be a challenge to go back and delete them. So okay, back. So this project is just a yarn project or an npm project, and as you might already know, npm has a way for you to declare some scripts that you can use in this project. And one of the scripts is create plugin, which runs yarn backstage create and some parameters. I'm thinking backstage create is another script which invokes backstage CLI, the official CLI that comes with this project. It runs this create command. And this create command is used to create like plugins, templates. It's really powerful. And then some additional parameters. So that's just something I wanted to show. But back here, let me zoom in a bit. All right, I think this is good. So an ID of the plugin. So this will be something unique, and it will be used in a lot of places. So for example, the catalog plugin has a unique ID catalog, and then it gets transformed into the plugin package name, which is at backstage /plugin-catalog. If it has a backend, then will be the backend suffix will be added. So this ID is really, really unique. It will be the name of the directory that will be created. So let's use my awesome plugin. Wow, so original. Enter an owner to add to code owners. So if you use GitHub code owners, this will be basically your team. So you can say teams, my awesome team. And it's going to create some files using the 2 things I have provided. So it's going to create a directory inside plugins, my awesome plugin, and then a lot of accompanying TypeScript files and all the things you need for an npm package, basically. It's running and stuff. You are welcome to add any questions in the comments, anything around Backstage or plugins or anything in general. I'd be happy to answer them. Install. All right, it's done. So the Backstage, our new Backstage plugin is created. Let's take a look at it. This will go inside plugins, and then I also plugin, and here it is. One of the things I love about this Backstage CLI or this plugin creation process is it has created a new npm package, but it has wired it up so that you don't have to make any changes, and it's going to show up in your Backstage instance. And This is amazing, and it just reduces the time it will take you from running a CLI and looking at it to minimum. So let's start our Backstage instance. The two ways you can do it: you can either run yarn dev, and then it will start the front end and the back end. The way I like it is I like running the front end and back end separately. So I'm going to run yarn start and then yarn start back end. And yeah, hopefully this will be on soon, and then we can see our newly created plugin. Localhost 3000 is where the front end runs, and 7007 is where the backend runs, because the new update in macOS has something running on 7000 by default. That was a big change. But let's see what changes it did, and we can explore the Git interface to look at it better. So it added something in my code runners. Oh, it changed a lot. Something with lint, I suppose. But in the front end part of Backstage, which is inside Packages app, it is importing something called my awesome plugin page. I hope you can read it well. Let me zoom in more. So this is a page, like a simple page that comes from my plugin. And then it must have added a route. There we go. So it has created a route. So if I go to my Backstage and I go to /my awesome plugin, it's going to render the page that exists in my new plugin. So the backend is taking a bit of time to start. Let's wait until it starts. But did it change anything else in the Backstage app? I think not. So all new changes are inside this plugin's my awesome plugin folder. So where is this my awesome plugin page coming from, which is imported in Backstage? Over here. So if I go to, let me exit this Git view, we want split screen. So if I go to plugins, oh, so many plugins. Source plugin.ts. So this is the page, or this is the file where a lot of the plugin is basically created. An instance of the plugin is created. As you can see, the create plugin function from Code Plugin API package is used here. And we basically create this plugin page component, and lots of syntax which we can ignore as of now. But this is basically importing a component, a React component, and then exporting it. So you can assume that this my plugin page is exactly the same as this example component, which exists inside my component side tree. And just React. So it imports a main page component from Backstage code components, and then adds some metadata like some header, some content. It's built on top of Material UI code, as you can see. But there's lots of cool components in Backstage as well to help you make sure Backstage looks consistent when you add new plugins. So imagine a case when some plugins in your Backstage are based on Material theme, but some are going from Bootstrap, some look very weird, and you don't want that to happen because it's just one platform. Although my backend has started. There we go. It's opened, and then the login screen disappeared because I'm already logged in. Maybe another video on authentication because that can get tricky. But as promised, The new route has been added, and I can check it. My awesome plugin. There we go. It's here. It has some cards by default, some table to look at, and that's pretty much it. It does nothing else. So, but this is an example of like how you can create a very simple plugin inside your Backstage app. So imagine if you have a Backstage instance in your company and you just want to showcase something to your engineers. Rather than creating a new website like myawesomeplugin.mycompany.net, you can just add it to Backstage and maybe add it in the sidebar, and then you're done. So it just Backstage promotes discoverability in one of the ways, and this is an example. And people will also know like who owns this plugin, so they will be able to reach out to you on Slack, on all the places. So this is done. I was going to show you something, I forgot. Cool, never mind. So this is done, and then let's make some changes and see if this is the real plugin that was created. So let's remove all these cards. Oh yeah, I remembered. It's about to show you the storybook of Backstage. So storybook, if you already don't know, is a page where you can showcase lots of components. And projects usually who have a lot of core components that are reusable, you would put them in your storybook. So someone new who is trying to maybe add a table or add a graph or a chart on the website, let's say, rather than trying to search on Google and like try to find a good component, they would come here and then search for existing components before they add something new. So yeah, the Backstage Storybook contains a lot of core components that you can directly use. For example, if you need a header, there's already a header component which you can use. And Storybook is awesome. It has lots of plugins. So this is a header changed, and then I can change some other parameters, and then if I go to story, I can see the code which is used to generate this. Pretty neat. Yeah, I can search things like table if I want to show a table in Backstage. So Storybook is going to be really useful when you're creating plugins for Backstage, because we'll need to use a lot of components, and hopefully most of the components already exist in here. If not, we'll search on Material UI. We're still using Material UI 4, and this is Material UI 5. So we'll search on this site and use components from Material UI if it's missing in Backstage code components. You can create your own storybook inside your company if you design yourself. Change the theme of Backstage, which is what most companies are doing. They are changing the name of Backstage and colors to suit their company brand. Examples being American Airlines calling their Backstage runway because it's an airplane company. So that was Storybook. So let's do something. So instead of this page, how about first off, let's make some changes to this page and see it being reflected here. So go back to VS Code. And this component was coming from, so this page is coming from this example component. How about we change it to welcome to the best plugin, and it's really good. The subtitle. Let's see if it changes instantly. So hot reloading works. One more tip on developing plugins. So if you want to run Backstage plugins in a standalone mode, so as of now we're running the entire Backstage, which means all the plugins in here, maybe 50, have to compile, and all of them are connected with hot reload. If something changes, they have to be updated. Um, and maybe we want faster reloads. So I can run this plugin in a standalone mode, and I don't have to run the entire Backstage app. And I can do that by going into my plugins folder. And then there's a dev directory. It has like an index.tsx. It's a simple page, but it basically renders my plugin. So if I run yarn dev, so I'm going to show you where I am. I'm inside plugins, my awesome plugin. And if I run yarn dev here, it's not found. So clearly I need to check docs. I'm going to this plugin section, plugin development. Nope. There we go. Yeah, run start. It's here. No, this is still reloading. Now it's here. So as you can see, the entire sidebar disappeared because it's this plugin running in the standalone mode, and then just the page, which I need to see. That's really cool. And you can customize this experience as well. So this dev index.tsx is basically what's doing the magic, creating a dev app. So it's like necessary things, but not excluding all plugins and unnecessary things that you don't need. And then it's adding just one plugin and then just one page, and it's running it. So you can basically add more plugins in here, hopefully. This is getting slightly advanced, and running plugins in standalone mode is advanced in itself. But just showing you the possibilities. That's it. Okay, let's exit it and run Backstage frontend in its entirety and not in standalone mode. What do we want to do next? What are the core uses of Backstage plugins? So this page is very much a website. You can do whatever you can on a website. But what's the power of Backstage? One of the core power of building plugins for Backstage is that you already have a registry of all the software components inside your company. So by plugins, if you can provide more metadata to your engineers looking at those services, that's a win. For example, you can of course go on PagerDuty and of course search for a service, and of course trigger an on-call button. But if you do it on Backstage, you don't have to go anywhere. Basically, you're looking at the CI/CD logs, for example, or you are reading the documentation for that service, or you are reading the APIs, for example, and you just notice that the service is down. So you don't have to go anywhere. You just go to catalog and just trigger PagerDuty right here. Like this is the Backstage monorepo, so we don't have it. But so as I said, like one of the best ways to build plugins for Backstage is to build it for the software catalog. So this is the entity page, as we call it. And the first tab is overview. So when you come to this service or an API or a user, any entity in Backstage pretty much, there's some simple things that you see which we can classify as overview of this plugin, like the metadata about who owns it and what type this is, and some tags to identify, to learn more about this. Some links if you need it, like external websites, but like the graph of this service, what APIs is this service providing, what APIs is this service using, where in the hierarchy of teams does the service lie, so who is the team directly responsible for it, but also like what org does this belong to. So with our plugin, we can add a card here. That's a very neat use case which I want to explore. But if you have like slightly larger plugins, like you are showing the CI/CD logs, you want them in a tab, in a tab like this: CI/CD, API, docs, Kubernetes information, and such things. So let's explore them. Let's add a card here and then use the entity metadata to build a more meaningful plugin. Shall we do it? Awesome. Let's do it. So, way to begin for this would be to understand how this page is being created. So if I go to Packages app, let me explore a different music. Okay, I can grab this. So inside Packages app source, if I go to components and if I go to catalog, I will see entity page, which is basically if you choose any entity in your software catalog, that's where you will land. And depending on the type of entity, it's going to change. And you can see all the logic here. It's a big file, just being honest with you. So you can see this logic. So if it's a component kind, render this component page, which is defined above. And then further categorization, like if it's a service or a website, but there's a default entity page. So same things for API, user, groups, system, domain. There's different kinds of pages. Let me try an example. So component page, this is a component page. But if I pick a service, look, if I pick something else like a system, this is the system page. And then there's a diagram of the system. What are systems and domains? You can read more about them in the backstage.io/docs page. If you go to software catalog, there'll be a page called system model. And you can understand more about like what are systems and domains, and basically how you can model your entire software ecosystem using software catalog. It's a very interesting topic to talk about. But for now, you can treat like a domain would be a business unit, like inside Spotify, it will be all things related to podcasts, and a system will be recommendations, and then there's a bunch of services in there and a bunch of resources and teams working on it. So what do we want to do here? So we want to create a plugin which shows up on a service entity page, like an entity page for kind component and then type service. So we'll of course need to modify the component page, and then inside service, there's another service entity page, which is pretty much the definition of what we see in the browser. You can see like there's an overview page, and then there's a bunch of tabs, and then each tab is basically coming from a plugin. So for example, this docs tab, which is missing something, it's coming from TechDocs content, and that's coming from the TechDocs plugin. Okay, so go back. It's hard to navigate this file. Component page, service entity page, and then the overview content is this page. So let's add a card here. So it starts with grid, then there's this entity about card, which is this bit. And there's graph, and then PagerDuty, it's missing, if it exists. So a way to showcase plugins is to use some if statements, like if this service uses PagerDuty, then only show PagerDuty plugin. If this service uses something called New Relic, then only show the dashboard. Otherwise, you'll have a bunch of cards here saying no information, and we don't want that. So that's a good like use case of using an if statement inside here. To tell you a bit more secret, generally these is PagerDuty available. Call them variable because it's usually true or false, or functions. Generally, they check the annotation on the entity, and then every plugin has a specific unique annotation. So if I go to this page called well-known annotations, there's lots of annotations. For example, the TechDocs plugin, which shows the documentation for an entity, uses this TechDocs ref annotation. So annotations can be like the value can mean something. Like in case of TechDocs, it means where are the documentation files. Another example would be it's deprecated. Should not show that. So let's say if you have a user entity, it can have an annotation called github.com/user-login, and it will mean like the username from GitHub for that particular user entity. But you can also add like true, false, and those kind of things. Like it depends on you. These annotations are pretty, the use cases are wide. They vary. So that's how this if statement is configured. But all right, let's add another grid here. It's an item or some other kinds of grid. And what is this grid component? Is this a Backstage component, or it's coming from Material UI? Oh, it's coming from Material UI. In that case, I'll search for Material UI grid and then when I need it. But for now, let's add another item, some accessibility parameters. So depending on the screen size, how wide should this look? And then here, we'll add something from our plugin. But for now, let's just do hello from our awesome plugin. Live coding, everyone. Live coding. Let's see if this works. So I've saved this entity page, and then something failed. Perfect. That's what I want. Element type is invalid. Expected a string for built-in components. So I can't like add a div here inside this div. What if I add like a string? There we go. Not so pretty, but here. Hello from my awesome plugin. I did it before it has the subcomponents thing, but that's we can figure out later. So let's do this. So this card, this hello from my awesome plugin, should come from the new plugin that we have created, which is inside plugins, my awesome plugin, source. Let's start here. So as of now, my plugin is exporting a page. We also want to export a card, just a card and not a page. To do that, I will need to look at an example because I don't exactly know what docs to look at. So let's look at an example. Maybe this catalog graph thing. So that is coming from this catalog. Let's look at the entity page and figure out. GitHub Insights is a good example as well. So entity GitHub Insights is coming from plugin GitHub Insights. Let's look at plugin GitHub Insights. GitHub Insights. It's not here. Hoping some other plugin also has examples of cards. There we go. Content, card, card, card. So there's three types of things that a plugin can export. Page, something called content, and cards. And there's a pattern in which these are created. And then it can be found in this page called composability system. So top level pages, they're just called page, like settings page or lighthouse page. And then entity tab content. So for all the things that should be a tab, we create this entity star would be filled with your plugin ID and then content. So entity, my awesome content will be a tab. But I just want a card. And I think that's just entity overview card. So entity something, my card. So we can just skip the content part and do a card. So what does it do? So my plugin, so to create a card, I just need to do my plugin.provide, create component extension. I will add the name of my card and then lazy load my React component. Let's show you an example. So let's create a component. And components are created inside folders. I think that's just to showcase, just to add some tests here as well. Let's follow that pattern. So let's create, let's call it entity overview card. Now, entity overview card.tsx. Now on the Backstage repo, I need to add this header file, and you can do this by pressing command dot. It's a handy tool, and then there's a way to add this notice by default. But let's create a new component. I want to be brave and just create something from scratch, but I also need to look at an example. So I import React for a simple thing, and then just to export a component. So let's do that. Export const entity overview card. Return. We'll change all of this later. Yeah, you don't close this like this. It's done. So I've exported this thing from here. Usually you can create an index.ts if you have multiple components, but for now, I think I'm fine with this. And let's export this as a card inside my new plugin. So I do my awesome. So remember the naming pattern. Entity, your plugin's ID, and then content. So it will be like entity, my awesome plugin, not content. Content is for the tabs. So we should go for entity, my plugin card. Let's do my awesome plugin because I used plugin and the plugin ID. Create route tool extension? No. Component extension. Composability is tricky, but hopefully there's enough examples so you don't have to remember what exactly you use. Component extension. Okay. Let's give it a name. Pretty much the name of the component itself. Then it has a component bit, and then we do lazy loading of the component. We want catalog to be blocked, and these components take time to load. So we're importing from components, entity overview card. Yep. Since it doesn't have an index.ts, let's create an index.ts here. Export. Yep, it's done. It's good. It's just slow on detecting files and such. I'm basically copying the syntax above. So don't worry, this looks complicated to me as well. Mount point, something called root route ref. I'm not sure about this. So I look at the example and we don't need something called root route ref or mount point. So the syntax of component is different. It needs something like curly braces and lazy is where you define it. Okay. And just a note for myself, I think default node for self, default plugin should contain examples of page content and cards, and should have doc strings on where they are used. Pretty much this bit. It's a good table. I'm going to create an issue on the project, or maybe add the change and see if it gets merged. But now we have a new card exported by our plugin, and let's use this thing. So I just added this to my plugin.ts, but since it's an npm package, I should add it, export it from index.ts as well. Let's do it. Now any other package, like I have node modules expanded. It's a scary thing. So remember I added, or let's see, paired this hello from my awesome plugin directly in my entity page. Let's find it. Instead of this, let's add our card here. And let's import it from the new plugin package we have created. Awesome plugin. Let's import it finally. Oh, or it's this genius of VS Code to figure out the import itself. There we go. So this is slightly a bit of wiring up. Just to add a bit of context for folks who are new here, we created a new plugin, just a simple page. So that was still available at my awesome plugin. This is just a page, a bunch of React components. You can do whatever you can with a website in here. And it's still pretty good because your users don't have to go to a new site. They just come to Backstage and maybe find this page in your sidebar, or hand a link to this Backstage, or maybe search and land your users over here. The second use case would be to add this plugin, to use this plugin to enhance the metadata of catalog. So in the overview page, I can add a card in here, or I can add a tab, which is done by a content type of component. But for now, we're just adding a card in here. This card, and it's done actually. This card is coming from my plugin. So if I have to just publish this plugin, in the instructions, what I will say is that, hey, just import this component called entity my awesome plugin card and update your entity page, and then use it like adding a new grid like this. But does it look like the grids, like the good components which are on this page? And that is because I was being lazy, and then I just added a simple div. That's not good. Let's make it look more pretty. So that will be done by adding a grid from material UI. And then doing this grid. Let me do something like return grid. Let's see what happens. Nothing happens because that's not enough. So where do you use this grid? Well, you know what? I'm going to copy this and then remove things. That will be easier. So a page type from Material UI. We need a header for this thing. Maybe I do. Maybe I do. Yeah. So header is for pages, and what we want here is just a content card. Content, I think it's coming from Backstage. It will be long. Yep. Support button. Let's skip it. My awesome plugin. And then a grid. Header, I think, is also coming from. Oh, yeah, we put it. Empty components are self-closing. Info card is coming from core components. Typography should be coming from Material UI. Where's the page coming from? Core components. Okay. Maybe I don't even need this page because we are not creating a page here. And then inside, we can say hello from my awesome plugin. So hopefully all the everything is resolved here. And then let's see how it looks. Aha, it looks better. And this is useless. I should have added it in here. So now looking at it, I don't need this header. It looks very weird. So this content, this info card is this thing, which has like a line, title, and then some content. So I like it. I don't need this content header. Perfect. Looks like I have used a lot of space here. That could be because I have used this page thing. It's not really a page. That makes it useless. Content header, not using the page. Hopefully this will be small enough. Done. There's still some inconsistency with how high it is. Could be because of this direction thing. Wait. Oh. What if I remove container? That's adding some paddings. We can debug this later. But for now, the important bit is using some catalog metadata in here so that this plugin is more useful. So that will be done by something called use entity hook. And we'll do this in 1 minute while I take a quick break. So let me just play a video for you folks. And then I'll be back.
Excited about Backstage but don't know where to start? Spotify has a new learning experience designed to help you get up and running with Backstage. Get familiar with key Backstage concepts and technical architecture. And with our step-by-step tutorials, learn how to set up, configure, and customize your Backstage app, helping you to reduce onboarding time and making your developers happier, faster. Get started today. Visit backstage.spotify.com/learn. Excited about Backstage but don't know where to start? Spotify has a new learning experience designed to help you get up and running with Backstage. Get familiar with key Backstage concepts and technical architecture. And with our step-by-step tutorials, learn how to set up, configure, and customize your Backstage app, helping you to reduce onboarding time and making your developers happier, faster. Get started today. Visit backstage.spotify.com/learn. Excited about Backstage but don't know where to start? Spotify has a new learning experience designed to help you get up and running with Backstage. Get familiar with key Backstage concepts and technical architecture. And with our step-by-step tutorials, learn how to set up, configure, and customize your Backstage app, helping you to reduce onboarding time and making your developers happier, faster. Get started today. Visit backstage.spotify.com/learn.
I am back. Different music. Hopefully, I'll do better next time with nice background music. Oh, cool, rock. Lo-fi is fine. So resuming, using some entity metadata to show some useful things inside this new plugin card that I have added from my new awesome plugin. So let's use this. Use entity is a hook. It's a React hook. So as you can see, this page is pretty much about artist lookup, and it's an entity. It's a component, which is a service. So I should be able to find out about the service name and the teams and like more information in here, so that if I need to make API calls to some third-party web service like PagerDuty, for example, I can do that. So let's try to use this thing called use entity. And if I'm not wrong, use entity comes from plugin or plugin API. This is a package which plugins are supposed to use. Nope, it doesn't come from there. Use entity, where do you live? Comes from catalog React. So if you're wondering about these naming patterns, on .io/docs, there is an ADR, and the ADR number 11 talks more about this. So package just like with your plugin ID that will contain the front end code of the plugin. But if you want some parts of the front end to be like optional modules, which you don't want to include all the time, because it will change with customer to customer, like adopter to adopter. So examples are if you're providing a search plugin, but Backstage Search can be built on top of Elasticsearch, can be built on top of just simple Lunar Search, Solar, just Postgres. So these different functionalities will live inside /module, like --module the name of the implementation provider probably. So yeah, I don't want to go into detail, but x-react is some shared components which you want other plugins to import, but not import the whole catalog plugin just for that. So I imported the use entity hook, and the way to use it is not inside my render return function, but over here I can do guessing the syntax here. Let's look at use entity. I think we have good API references on the website. Grab the current entity from the context, throws if the entity has not been loaded or is not available, and returns an entity. Cool. What does entity provide? Does it have like entity.name and such? So it's basically the entire entity YAML file. So I can do entity.metadata.name to get the name of the entity. So let's do it. Big. This is coming to our on entity page of what is the issue here? Maybe this preschool is behind. Should be listed in the project's dependencies. Of course, of course. So we are using a new package now. And then this package should be listed as a dependency of our plugin, which is an NPM package in itself. So let's do it. Yeah, let's add it as a dependency. Since this, a quick note on dependencies and dev dependencies. Generally, you want to add things in dependencies if what you're importing from that dependency is part of your exports. So my card is something that I export from this package, and it's using this thing from this dependency. And so I want to bundle it alongside my plugin. Holy moly! Yeah, logs. But I've just added a dependency using yarn add. But that was just a warning. I think we can still see this in action. Oh, no, wait. I think I'll need to restart my front end. If you see this error when running your install things, don't worry, because it says here the model is optional and you can safely ignore that error. So I've added the dependency in my plugin. Restart my front end. On start. That's why I like running backend and front end separately, is because my backend is uninterrupted with these changes. Okay. So I'm back, and this card is now using the entity metadata for this artist lookup. So you can pretty much get everything that this entity YAML file would contain. Just to show an example, Backstage in itself has an example catalog info YAML describing this entity. So you can have its name, a description, annotations, which is something that's very useful for plugins, and then more things like spec and all. And the docs for this is at backstage.io/docs. The features, software, YAML file format. I opened this page too many times, to be honest, but this basically talks about all the fields in these YAML files for entity. So we have made this plugin more useful by using this component. But what if we want to do more things like call an external service? Before we do that, let's quickly finish like adding a tab in here because that's the use case which we should know how to do it. So if you remember, those things are done by this naming pattern of content. It was the composability page. So the naming pattern is for a tab, entity, plugin ID, and content. So let's do it. Export const entity my awesome plugin content equals to, and then I need to look at an example. Maybe look at TikToks. TikTok source plugin TS. Content. Here we go. So we do create a routable extension. So we do my awesome plugin provide a routable extension. So let's do this as the main component is. So I do want to simplify things. So I'm going to reuse this grid. This grid component as the page itself, but you can, of course, create a new page. This is the TikToks example. So we can do this, easy import, and then mount point. That's interesting. So I think mount point would be, let's keep this plugin open, would be the URL that you want the tab to open in. Sorry, I'm closing things and the tab disappears. So inside the component, I have this, and then since this is a tab on catalog, I need a mount point, which should be a URL, not a name. Let's take a look at how you define these things. But if I skip this, I don't think I can. Let's look at the entity page as of now. And let's look at an example, which is, let me close this. Where is my local Backstage instance? Yes. So let's look at the CI/CD example. So you do something like this: entity layout, route, path, and then title, and then the content. So where did I add my awesome plugin? Card. Here. This is inside overview. So let's go to the bottom. So for component, the component page, if it's a type service, this thing is called service entity page. Let's add a new tab here. So we do entity layout, route, path will be some plugin, let's call it. Title, awesome plugin, not so good, I know. The content will be the component that we have created. But it's erroring out because it needs a mount point. There's a default in here. Well, I'll come to this, but let's export this. Content component from my plugin, and then import it inside my Backstage app. The entity page component of file. And then use it. All right, so I've added a new tab in my entity page, which is going to, you need to call this expression. Do I need to call this expression? I don't know, I don't think so. What do these content things look like? Entity switch. So it's not that simple. Huh. Okay, maybe that's a warning. Let's see if the tab is here. So it's here. Hoping to run into emptiness. That's exactly what I have run into. Let me dock it on the side. Wait. What's this? Inspect. Dock. Settings. This thing, yeah. Let's look at the console. If there are any errors, there's lots. Functions are not valid as a React child. This may happen if you return a component instead of components from render, or maybe you want to call this function and then return it. So probably I have defined my plugin content thing wrong. Not too sure about this. Look at an example. So you export this. Let me go inside my side. So I'm looking at the Lighthouse plugin, for example. So the plugin will provide, create routable extension, write a name, insert component, you import, and then you do that thing of that and component. It's the overview card, which returns something. So yeah, I think card thing is the trick bit. Is you're not supposed to return just React components in here. It's a page. What does the embedded router looks like? Return some routes in itself. Adding a tab is tricky. Let's look at the Kubernetes example. Page. It's exporting its router. I was expecting it would just, yeah. Okay, so clearly we can't use the same component for both, like the component inside overview page or another page, and the same for like a tab. So I was expecting tabs to be much simpler, but it turns out that you need special route thingies, and then like give an element into that. But I want to try a simple hack if it's possible. So my awesome plugin. What if I call this thing? This work? No, I don't think so. Okay, so I don't know how to add tabs. That's the simple gist. Let's move on, and we'll cover tabs later. To cover how to add tabs. Something to do with routers. But so inside this component that we have created, let's remove this tab thing. Okay. Page. So there's the information card, and then it's using the entity metadata. Now let's do some API calls. So simplest way would be just do a fetch from the React component. I think we also have an example component doing that. So example fetch component is basically when you render it, uses the use async hook, and then get some data from this, and then returns it. So why don't we just render it instead of creating a new one? So just changing this import, for example, fetch component, and then let's see what it looks like. I've changed the page, and supposed to change the start thing. The page is the entire page shows up on dash my awesome plugin, and this card is where it's going to show. This is the example fetch component. Fetching some example users from a place. So that's simple, but what if we want to make some API calls which uses some secrets, some tokens? So you want to call a third-party service from this component. Examples would be you want to call GitHub, you want to call AWS or Google Cloud Provider, you want to call PagerDuty or something else that you're building this plugin for. So the way to do it is, it depends. So if the third-party service already has really neat APIs that you can just directly call. Let's take example for a CI/CD provider, like Circle CI. If it already has APIs like, if I give it a service name, it can return the statuses, it can return recent builds, and then it can show logs for it, given like a build ID or a commit ID, then that's good. And I don't need to write a custom Backstage plugin, backend plugin for it. And this is done by using a proxy backend. If you go to appconfig.yaml, and if you search for proxy, there's this proxy backend plugin which provides its functionality. So inside your proxy, inside your appconfig.yaml, you declare a proxy namespace, for the lack of a better word, and then you create these proxy endpoints, and then you tell Backstage if a request comes to this. I think the request will be like /proxy/ Circle CI /API. But let's look at this proxy backend plugin. I want to look at the README of this plugin. Okay, I'm back here. That was a waste of 20 seconds. I just wanted to know like what exactly URL the front end needs to call, and I think it's /API /proxy and then whatever you define in here. It has a few fields like where exactly it should forward your request to, what headers you need to add, and this is usually where you can add your secrets, because and they live in the backend, so you're safe. Things like an authorization header, and then read from the environment variable and then just append it. So your front-end plugin can just freely call /API /proxy, then this proxy URL, and then the proxy backend can forward that request by appending this like headers, for example. There are more options in here, like you can change the origin of this request if the third-party service is really strict about it. You can add some methods and some headers that this forward. So I think I'm just guessing at this point, but if your front-end plugin is adding more headers, this option can just trim it. But let's check. List of headers that should be forwarded and received from the target. Allowed methods. Limit the forwarded HTTP methods. For example, get enforces read-only access to this third-party service. So yeah, I mean, if you just add get, you can't build a plugin which does post requests to this third-party service. So I think that's pretty much it. The proxy backend comes with your default Backstage app installation. So you can just start adding these proxy URLs and then just get started. So I want to use it myself. And I want to use, let's see, we want to delve into like GitHub tokens, but let's try. So let's do it. GitHub API, because that's one of my favorite APIs to deal with. So I think we just need an authorization GitHub token header in here using the REST API. So let's create a proxy endpoint for GitHub / GitHub target. And then my proxy backend will append a header, which will be, I think it's basic token something. Let's look at it. All the curl examples is this thing. So authorization, and then just token. And I think I can do dollar GitHub. I think this will work in the Backstage syntax, yeah, as I can see here. Now, if I send, and I think I have GitHub token set up, but I'm going to test it. And of course, I will do it on another screen. So the token is here. Perfect. So I have a GitHub token set in my environment variable, and let's call it simple endpoint like api.github.com/me. Is it an API? No, it's not. /user. That's authentication. So let's call this endpoint /user and see if it works. So for my front-end plugin, so where do I want to call this? I want to call it from this card that my plugin exports. So that's my entity mouse and plugin card. And then, as of now, I've just added an example fetch component, but this is where I'll just call the GitHub endpoint, basically. So why don't we use this and just create a new component called sample, or too many examples, GitHub proxy component, and we use async hook from React hooks. Yeah, React use that. I have to do like this. Hook use async. Use. Hoping this would work. Promise of a user. No, no, no. I don't know what this returns. I don't have a tag for this yet. So what are we calling here? So we are calling the backend endpoint here. Another good tricky bit which I really like is how do we know what's the URL for the backend? Is it localhost 7007 or is it something else? So that is done by using something called a discovery API. And an example would be Discovery API ref. Discovery API. APIs to provide mechanism plugins to discover the endpoint to use to talk to their backend counterpart. What's the simplest way to use it in a front end? So I think you can just import the API ref, import discovery API ref. And then just you can do use API from CodePlugin API, and then you can just use API. It's just the API ref. API. Then you can do discovery API dot so I'm just, I think it is wrong. Should be a function. Base URL. Base URL. Let's log this thing. Base URL. I should remember that. What's wrong here? Unreachable code. Okay. Return dense table. No, as of now, just return. Rubis bar should come from two components, I think. Alert. So just wanted to check if this thing works, and then then we can talk more. Argument plan ID was not provided. I just need the base URL for maybe proxy. Oh, yeah. I need a base URL for the proxy backend. So let's open this and then look at the console. It's still rendering the example, that example fetch component, which is not good. Means something is not updated. Yeah, so I'm inputting the fetch component here, so that's not good. So example component. Yeah, let's see something in the logs. There we go. Let's promise, and if it's fulfilled, it returns this URL. Pretty neat. That's what I wanted. So we learned something new: how to find an endpoint for a backend endpoint for a service. It will change depending on how you deploy it. So remember to use the discovery API to discover those endpoints. So let's call this proxy API, proxy backend base URL. So this, just for out of curiosity, I want to talk more about this. How is this used basically? So if I go to my backend part of the Backstage app, and then if I go to source index.ts, I can see like how backend endpoints are defined here. So proxy is just one of the backend plugins, and you kind of use this create env and then give it a unique ID for the backend plugin, and that's what Discovery API uses. And if you define it on whatever route, that's the route you'll get. Sorry, this one. So yeah, that's how this works. So I have it. Let's call this. Let's use here. What's the base here? /API/proxy, and then I can just do /GitHub. Change of music. Then I can do GitHub. So this part is how I have defined my proxy in YAML /GitHub, and / whatever I give here, it's going to append it to api.github.com. So I need to call the user endpoint. And that's the response I will get. And then I don't know how that looks like. So I need to console log it. Cool. Let's see if that works. Well, 16.98 stars. Just star Backstage, please, if you haven't. Help us reach 17,000 stars on GitHub. Something plugin boundary. Oh my god, let's press reload. Okay. I think I've messed up something. I think alert comes from the So GitHub proxy component is something I've used here. I have not exported it. Cannot be used as JS implements, region type is element in the world. It's not allowed. That's just TypeScript messing with me. Alert was not found in that. Where is alert coming from? Visual UI lab. It's too experimental. It's in the lab. Cool. Did we get some responses? Token in JSON. God. Start here. What are we returning here? So we're returning this progress. If it's still loading, if the request is still in progress, there is an error. We show an error, but otherwise we return this div, and then we add tools in here. Clear this. Technically, there's no errors inside console. Wait, what? Why is this a page? Plugin.ts. It's this card thing. This card is showing the example component. Oh my god, no. Aren't they updating this? Yes, we're completing this example component. It's a page. So this is not good. I wanted to do the things in here. So an entity overview card, regard, then all these things. Regard. And over here, typography, but I can just add GitHub proxy component, and then just fix the imports. So use API, ref, also from there. Okay. Use these from React. Use and progress from two components and alert from a UI map. See, remember everything. And yeah, that's all we need. So now we're rendering this thing, which is not a page. Use API is not defining up. We defined it. So let's just reload. Unexpected in JSON. So I think it's coming from like here. So like this response cannot be translated into a JSON. So if I do response dot text or status, We'll just log the response. So I think that was coming from GitHub, so everything was fine in how we had redirect. So this is the response. It has a body. So it has a body. What if I do body stream? How do I translate it? So I need to look at an example of using the proxy backend. Perhaps there are some special ways in which you read them. Look at that, there's a tutorial. It's created from the community. Okay. So you're using Discovery API, find the proxy URI. What's this dot fetch? Where did that come from? Await fetch, not okay, otherwise .json. So something wrong with GitHub not giving a good JSON, is that it? Readable stream with JSON. So what if I do .body.json, because .body is a readable stream. Maybe await it because .json is checking address. Show me the logs. Respond.body.json is not a function. That makes it more complicated. Text. Not await. Text is not a function. So I have a readable stream in the body, and then now response again. I'm not sure if this tutorial is up to date. Last update is 17 June. Is it about this page or the whole doc site? So I want to look at the proxy backend. Go to the proxy backend plugin directly. I don't think it's a package, it's a plugin called proxy backend. Okay. Read router reads from all things proxy, then for each, excuse me, called something called build middleware, which reads from the string, the config, and then changes with the headers and proxy resolution names for each. Create proxy middleware, which comes from this HTTP proxy middleware thing. So it doesn't do something, like it doesn't change a lot in the response. Have I defined the proxy backend in the right way? Should it be like API v4 or something? So like, or is it just GitHub API? Just API. It doesn't need any v4 tags, v3, v4 tags. So I'm thinking if I give up on GitHub API and then use something else, just give it one more shot on. So what I've done here, proxy backend URL / GitHub / user. Can I log? Can I see the logs when this request happens? I always have log level debug enabled. So if I reload this in the backend, I should be able to see proxy backend saying that a GitHub request is being created. Backstage. Proxy. No. Proxy. Did it reload my backend after I added that proxy? Maybe it's necessary. I think I forgot to reload the backend after adding that config in the backend. So I wanted to make notes of things that we covered, and then I need to cover later. So front-end only plugin, I think this one thing that was missing is how you would add a tab. It's looked like a bit more complicated to me, but hopefully this proxy backend thing is resolved by restarting the backend, and then front-end and backend both will be. I want to cover this in next session on next Friday, and this will be backend part of the plugin, utility APIs in the backend, sample reader, database, etc., config, etc., and then rename frontend utility APIs. That should do it. There's some more advanced things like search, integrating the plugin with search, but slightly more advanced. But the use case in all plugins. Okay, so restart my backend, and then let's see if the proxy backend works now. No, nothing changed, but is there a log for proxy? There you go. Created GitHub to api.github.com. Log for the request online. So that is not looking good. What if I just read for like one of the existing proxy backends? Config. I think these are just need tokens. I need tokens. If I call some other endpoints, let's say, wait, why have I added this? Slash GitHub, I think, yeah, I think it needs to get it. Let's log our fetch as well. So if I go to network, I want to see what fetch request did it make. No fetch request. Oh, it's filter. What? Where's the proxy request? What is this? What? No. What is this request? Of course, it's going to give me nothing. Huh. Okay, so I think the problem here is, oh my god, I'm so stupid. It needs to be outside. I forgot how to do string formatting, actually. So let's create this proxy backend URL is a variable, and then it needs to be here. Right. Basically, I forgot string formatting. That's the truth. JavaScript string format. Aha, the backtick. See? That's why you should write code more often. Where was it? I should have used this. And it should work because it should send request to the correct endpoint at least. Something changed. It's a promise. Okay, this is a promise. Responsible piece URL. Cannot use keyword await outside an async function. Okay, then this. Let's try. Oh my God, we are here. Holy shit. Nice, nice. So I can see the GitHub response for it. Data return, maybe just data here. And then just use data.login. So we can just say here, value, login, and user, login. This should show me my username on the component. Being very optimistic. Ooh, awesome. So I made it work. Took some mistakes to discover, but so my plugin is now using a proxy backend to call a third-party service, which is GitHub, and showing me some information, and it's using some tokens that I have defined in the environment variable from a backend. So next up, it's almost 2 hours. So next up, I'll be covering how to add a how to add a tab on the entity page. So that's the last bit in the front end. And then we have covered the proxy backend. So I'll jump straight to creating a backend plugin and all the cool things that you can do with it. Backend plugins really make Backstage plugins super powerful because you can create monstrous softwares like software catalog, but also like simple plugins which just need a database. So that is it for today. Thank you for watching. There'll be more content coming from me around Backstage, and looking forward to inviting some guests here to do some pair programming on things and spreading more knowledge. With that, I have a good day to the rest to you. Bye. I'm Himanshu. I am a developer advocate at Spotify. I work for Backstage, and see you around in the community.
Excited about Backstage but don't know where to start? Spotify has a new learning experience designed to help you get up and running with Backstage. Get familiar with key Backstage concepts and technical architecture. And with our step-by-step tutorials, learn how to set up, configure, and customize your Backstage app, helping you to reduce onboarding time and making your developers happier, faster. Get started today. Visit backstage.spotify.com/learn.